My friends, you have come to my channel in my hour of despair. I am a 32-year-old unmarried single man, a millennial in plight. What is wrong with the world that someone such as I can't have a beautiful lady for which I can open the door and throw down my coat and tip my hat? I'm totally kidding, by the way. While I would say, yes, it's true, I am an unmarried 32-year-old man, it's all actually by choice. And it's actually an interesting thing. There's a lot of stuff I want to talk about here, but I was thinking about this because I have been browsing the online dating as of lately and decided to make a somewhat personal but kind of, well, it's a personal, but it's also a look into some of these issues. You see this article up, Why Millennials Refuse to Get Married. And I was thinking about this the other day as I watched some TV shows, laughed at romantic comedies, and browsed Bumble and OkCupid. And I found something that I think that correlates rather well to an extent. For one, before I get into why millennials refuse to get married, I want to show this. This is a poll from Pew Research that shows that millennial women around my age or younger, 68% lean towards Democratic and only 24% Republican. And as I was surfing OkCupid and looking at these various profiles and comparing our questions, I noticed that most of the women were far left. So if you're not familiar with how OkCupid works, the dating website, you answer a series of questions, you tell the system how you feel and how you want someone else to answer. So for instance, one of the questions is communism, in concept, good or bad? I said bad. And I do not want to, and don't match me with someone who thinks it is good. That was very important to me. Because I feel like anybody who thinks communism is good truly doesn't understand the economic principle behind communism or capitalism or the history of communism. I understand you can separate the history from the concept of communism, but even as a concept, it's just too extreme and I think it is bad. But what I found was, even though I said, I don't want to meet anybody who is a communist or likes communism, OkCupid was still sharing all of these people with me who were communists. Not only that, one of the questions was, is capitalism good or bad? And I said capitalism is good, somewhat, because there is excellent criticism of it, and I am certainly not a laissez-faire capitalist, but I don't want to meet someone who thinks it is only bad. Yet, for some reason, OkCupid would only share with me people who thought it was bad. And then I found something else. Well, what I found was that most of my questions as a liberal, socially liberal, which fall in line with regular old American social liberal policies, don't fall in line with this 68% of Democratic women. Another one of the questions is, should we get rid of the gender wage gap? And it gives you a few responses. One of them is, yes, it's ridiculous, and what wage gap? And so I responded with the only thing I thought reasonable, what wage gap? Because we know that when you compare jobs for jobs, job type to job type, the wage gap almost entirely disappears, and that by most research, the reason for what's left of the wage gap between 3 and 7% is due to, one, negotiations. Women are less likely to negotiate, and the other is that women are penalized for taking time off to raise a family, which I think is a problem, and it is unfair, but I don't know what you can do about it. If a man doesn't have to give birth to a child, then they have an advantage, and maybe there's nothing that can be changed. However, it was pairing me up with women who said, yes, we should get rid of the wage gap. The thing is, almost all of my principles are liberal. But I am a learned person, I'm center-left, socially liberal, and I understand the wage gap isn't real because I've done research. I understand that communism is bad because I've done research. I understand that capitalism is good because I have done research. And there were too many people, all of them, that were answering these were good, like that communism was good and capitalism was bad, and that we should get rid of the wage gap. And I felt, these are people who probably don't understand some basic tenets of these concepts. So I certainly am not compatible with someone who doesn't understand these basic things. The other problem is this 24% that's Republican. Because when I do find women on the dating site who are Republican, they're religious. They're Catholic and Christian, of which I am not. So the dating pool is rather small. And I started to feel like, for one, I probably shouldn't get too personal, but I have dated recently, and for the most part, I just focus on work, and I'm kind of burned out on all of the political nonsense and culture war stuff That, like, you know, when I see on OkCupid these questions, I'm like, do I really want to spend time with someone where we're probably going to argue about this stuff? Probably not. The culture war has gone so insane. There really is this rift between men and women where we can see most millennial males, be it only by a small margin, are Republican, and the minority is Democratic. But women overwhelmingly fall in Democratic, and I wonder why that is. Seriously, why is it? And you can even see the divide in general across all demographics. There really is a split between men and women. Perhaps it's, abortion issues and birth control and things of that nature. But whatever it is, it's making things rather difficult. For the most part, I feel like I do have a lot of female friends and exes that I'm still friends with that it didn't work out, and I'm probably not going to pursue, but they're better than most of the people I've seen, probably because I've known them and we're actual friends and our beliefs are rather similar as we've grown together. But I feel like as politics drive a wedge between men and women, we're going to end up with people who probably don't feel too dissimilar to me, where they're young, secular, like atheist or agnostic males who are socially liberal, believe in equal rights for all races and genders and identities, but know full well that communism is bad and that the gender wage gap is a myth. But this puts you at odds with those who don't know that. And what I've been told by my friends is, dude, you gotta find a nice conservative woman because then she's gonna wanna be a mom and raise a family. And I'm like, well, I don't believe in conservative values the same way. Like, I'm not a conservative. Sure, there are some things I can agree with, but for the most part, no. I'm not particularly traditional in a lot of these senses. I don't believe in their government policies. A lot of them straight up say on OkCupid that they don't mind war, and I'm like, ooh, I'm like a hippie, man. I'm totally anti-war, relatively pacifistic, if that's the, I'm relatively pacifistic, is that the word? So I find that within these two groups, the dating pool of what I find to be sane, logical people is closer to the middle, but so rare and hard to find that I just kind of said, yeah, you know what, don't care. But this is what leads me to making this video. The phenomenon exists. The average person is polarized in some direction, and we can see from the data that the average millennial woman is polarized to the extreme left, to the point where they're praising communism. And to me, that is, I'm not going to have a family with a communist. It's plain and simple. The idea that you don't have a right to freely sell your labor or trade the fruits of your labor. Communism does not believe in that. Capitalism is the rights of the individual to control the fruits of their labor and sell it as they see fit. Communism is the collective does it. For people to be collectivist, to me, is like, it's incompatible, And so I think this phenomenon is driving at least some of the reason why young people aren't dating or getting married. But let's look at this. So this article is, where is this article from? I don't know exactly, but this is from Bentley University. And I'm not sure it's the greatest source, but there's a reason I pulled it up. It's a .edu. It's from some university. It's got an official government tag, so it must be accredited, I'm assuming. But they talk about how marriage rates are plummeting. The median age at first marriage is now 27 for women and 29 for men, up from 20 and 23 from 1960. They say the impact for not getting married. Boston Globe columnist Tom Keene says this trend could be cause for alarm. Millennials reject timely marriage at your own risk, warns his column. Not getting married at all could prove tragic. And he goes on, but why aren't people getting married? Well, they say 25% of millennials will never get married. A new report from Pew Research predicts that more folks under 35 will be single forever. Young couples are opting to live together and put off marriage for later, if at all. About a quarter of unmarried young couples ages 25 to 34 are living with a partner, according to Pew Research analysis of current population survey data. Marriage has lost much of its social allure, but remains a desired milestone for about 70% of millennials. They say they would like to marry, but many, especially those with lower level of income and education, lack what they deem to be necessary prerequisite, a solid economic foundation. I'm not entirely sure that's the case either, though, because certainly pooling your resources with a spouse can help you get a nicer home, a better apartment, or whatever. Pooling resources helps. Even as marriage rates have plummeted, particularly for the young and the less educated, Gallup survey data show that young singles very much hope to get hitched. Of Americans age 18 to 34, only about 9% have both never been married and say they do not ever want to marry, she wrote. So they talk about the changing ideas of marriage, the evolution of marriage. But the point I wanted to bring up with this is, well, I'll read the final thoughts. They say, The definition of marriage has been fluid over time and between cultures, he said. In American marriages, as they have evolved, the idea is to marry by mutual consent and build first and foremost a relationship. Among some Amazonian societies, the marriage relationship is first an economic partnership, with clear division of labor from which a relationship may develop. Among more religious societies, such as rural Catholic in southern Mexico, there is some overlap with the Amazonian, and the American rural model is economy first, relationship second, with clear division of labor and added sanction of religion. Will the millennial generation usher in a new era that saves American marriage by allowing it to evolve? Radical as it may seem, they just might. So this is just from a writer at Bentley University in Massachusetts. And I think there's one important thing that's brought up in the article as to why marriage is kind of going away and young people aren't really in relationships. There's no economic incentive for it anymore. Back in the day, there was. Women weren't working. So a woman finding a man made sense. But also, everybody was really strict in terms of sexual relationships. So men had to work really hard and commit if they wanted a sexual partner. Today, that's just not the case. Anybody can go do whatever they want, so people aren't getting married and relationships are becoming few and far between. Look, my dad had 2 kids by the time he was 28. Me and my brother. And I started thinking about how I'm 32 and I don't have a family. But there is something that's happened with young people where they're delayed or stunted or whatever this might be for whatever the reason, I don't know. For me, I would say probably economic factors contributed heavily and my dedication to work, which with a change in society has resulted in me working nonstop and not having time to focus on relationships. One of my most recent exes is a high-level executive type person and we never saw each other. So it just really didn't make sense, but that was kind of the most compatible person for me. Now, we both travel so much, it just doesn't happen. But there really isn't an incentive for people. And whatever the reason might be, I know a lot of people who are in their 30s, aren't married, live with roommates, and just sit around playing guitar and video games all day. It feels to me like some kind of a aspect of adulthood disappeared. With the going away of whatever the past was, a lot of young men still party. I mean, I know people who they have homes in their late 30s, early 40s, or even the people who live around me have kids and they don't spend time partying. They don't go to their friend's house. They have no roommates. They're family people. But for whatever reason, it seems like millennials overwhelmingly aren't doing that. I could be wrong, but at least that's the case. So anyway, I'm not going to rant too much longer on the idea. You can comment and let me know what you think about why it is that dudes aren't in relationships or whatever. But I believe I have one more article coming up in just a few minutes, so stick around.